This podcast is owned and operated by the RCR Association, a private third party to the Department of National Defense. The content of this podcast is the responsibility of the RCR Association and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of the Government of Canada. The official emblems of the regiment are used with the permission of Regimental Headquarters, the RCR. So we're recording, sir.
All right.
I just want to say thanks everybody for tuning in for today's episode. We have a very special guest. I know I say this every time I record with somebody, but it really is today. It's
really this time.
my boss's boss's boss, the commanding officer of 3RCR, Lieutenant Colonel Ben Rogerson. Sir, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, no, it's a pleasure to be here. Obviously, love the podcast. Love what you guys are doing, and I've been avoiding this a little bit. I've promised to come, but like honestly, I feel it's important for the podcast, that people see soldier stories, because this is one thing I've been ranting about lately is like people don't connect with random directorates in Ottawa and like these sterile social media accounts that are out there. I think it's important that Canadians resonate most with what soldiers have to say.
Yeah.
And so like I feel like I really respect what you've been doing here and prioritizing. Like you've had some senior leaders here, but like I like that you're prioritizing soldiers and NCOs, because I just feel like it's more it comes off as more authentic, because it is a lot of the time.
Yeah.
They're less guarded in what they say sometimes, and I think that resonates with people. So but all that said, I'm glad to commit to my promise and spend some time with you here. So.
Sir, like you've been a champion of our podcast, and granted, a lot of us work in your battalion, but the amount of effort you put in kind of like behind the scenes for us to kind of like, I don't want to use the title of the reference here, but you'd like depart the Red Sea for us every time, I feel like, I really appreciate it. Sometimes our little conversations in the hallway turn into like emails that are very actionable, to an extent. And so it means a lot.
Hey, that's cool that you feel that way, because that's
that's important.
That's exactly the feeling I was hoping I would give you. Like a lot of unit level leadership, I think, is setting conditions for teams to succeed, and so that's what I strive to do here every day with mixed results. But I'm glad you feel supported that way, because that's the way I want everyone on this team to feel. And another big part of being a unit leader is knowing when to get out of the way. And like I've been doing a lot of that with you. Right?
Oh my God, sir!
That's keep out of your way. And
yeah.
Look at all this crazy stuff you guys have built, and like as you said, learning as you go. And so I'm just trying to support and stay out of your way. So I'm glad you feel that way.
Oh, thank you, sir. I like to ask guests to kind of, if they can, introduce themselves like a little bit. But in this case, everybody listening understands you're the commanding officer. Can you tell us in a bit of a nutshell about your career when you joined the military, and what kind of positions you've held until now?
Sure. Yeah. So high level Coles Notes, born in Quebec to English Quebecer family.
Whereabouts in Quebec?
So the eastern townships of Quebec. So it's kind of like southeast of Montreal and I-10 down there near the Vermont border. My dad's family were Scottish immigrants, so I'm like third generation Canadian, like farm hands, eventually landowners, farmers themselves. My mom's family, I think there's some version of loyalists. The history is less clear there, but parts of my mom's family trace back to like 1700s in Quebec.
Wow.
But I think like a big part of her family did move up from the US around in the 1800s. And my dad worked for one of the few industries in my hometown, which was a packaging plant. And my mom was a bit of an entrepreneur, business owner. Family business, yeah. Like a nursery, like a gardening business, retail. And so growing up, hard work was an important part of growing up. And so I was started young by my family doing that.
Did you come from a big family? Lots of siblings?
I have two sisters, big family, lots of aunts and uncles, two sisters, very successful sisters. One's a physiotherapist and has a small practice in my hometown, and my older sister works for Hershey Canada.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah. But I joined in 2000 because I wanted to be a pilot, actually.
No way. Tell us about this.
And I was gonna make my own way. And I ran into a recruiter at like career day at school, right?
In high school, I'm guessing?
Yeah. And so I was looking at some commercial flight schools, and they were talking about $60,000 to earn a commercial pilot's license, which I mean today is a lot, but back then seemed like a real lot of money for me. And then I met this recruiter who was telling me promises of earning money while going to school and becoming a pilot at the same time. And so that sounded pretty great. And so I signed up for that. I was only 16 at the time in 2000. So my folks actually had to sign the papers for me because I wasn't old enough.
Waivers.
Yeah. I don't think they were actually all that convinced I would succeed. And so that's probably why they were so ready to sign the papers. My mother was real hesitant. Well, my father, he figured I would just wait until I was old enough and then go and do it anyway. And he's probably right. So they supported me with that, and I'm grateful. And so from there, went to Royal Military College of Canada.
So you enrolled as a pilot?
I enrolled as a wannabe pilot, essentially. But then when I did my selection, aircrew selection in my first year of university, and I have to admit, my parents were somewhat right. The military was not a natural fit for me, and it took me some adaptation.
Tell us about this.
So I really struggled with basic. In fact, I had to redo a portion. At that time, there was 2 parts of basic. And so I was recoursed on one of my, so this was not natural.
What was it? What was the struggle?
I think it was just like, I was young, just adapting to different lifestyle change. Like I led a pretty sheltered life, I would say, a small town, and it was just a lot all at once for me.
Yeah.
Just managing my time, lack of sleep, just none of it came natural to me at all.
Me too.
So I struggled really hard at the start, but stuck with it. Did aircrew, unsuccessful at aircrew selection, and at that time you could redo aircrew selection if you went and did your private pilot's license. So concurrent to going to university, I did that. I went and got most of my private pilot's license. But by the time I'd sort of almost earned the private pilot's license, I'd completed most of my infantry training and realized at that point that I much preferred the infantry than what at the time I felt was a lot of sitting alone in a box and doing mental math as a pilot. So I was on the cusp of going back to aircrew selection, and I said, no, forget it. I spent a year at 2 RCR at the 2nd Battalion in New Brunswick.
That was your first posting?
As an OJT between my infantry training.
Okay.
And that small taste, as well as, Afghanistan was going on, and I knew that if I stuck with it, I almost certainly would deploy with the 2nd Battalion as a platoon commander, which eventually did come to pass. And so I stuck with the infantry and pursued getting back to 2 RCR, to the RCR, to 2 RCR to deploy with them.
Did you have like any sort of understanding of the regiments at that time? Like, did you choose a location? Like, how did it go about it?
So I guess in terms of the regiment, what drew me was obviously I chose infantry to be an infantry officer when I had to OT after failing my aircrew selection. The reason why I chose the infantry was because the instructors I'd had on my basic training had made such an impression on me, and specifically the NCOs, the NCO instructors I had, who were RCR NCOs, made such a deep impression on me that I was.
Do you remember any of them?
Yeah, I had Sergeant Paris. He's one of 2, the Paris brothers, one of the 2. And let's see who else. He was really one that really stood out. And there were others as well. Sergeant Simmons, who later I served with at 2 RCR. He's now retired. But there was a few of them, and I just saw the confidence they had, and the sort of tangible leadership qualities they displayed, and I just intuitively knew that's going to be useful in life.
Wow.
If I can become that type of leader, and so that's what I pursued.
It's interesting. You got in, so you joined the military with the intention of becoming a pilot pre 9/11.
Yeah.
Right? Like Canada hasn't been at war or involved in like significant combat operations for a very long time.
Yeah. And especially like where I'm from, there was very little connection to the CAF at all.
Do you have any connection with your family?
My only connection is my great uncle. He was a Sherbrooke Hussar, who now that regiment doesn't exist anymore, but they've been perpetuated by the Sherbrooke Fusiliers. And he drove and was a mechanic for a Sherman tank.
Wow.
He drove a tank.
Wow.
In World War II. He didn't talk about his time, like many of those veterans didn't talk about the details of what he did during those times, but I know he survived several tank crews and several tanks. And so like we could just imagine he probably had quite an intense time there. But that really is, and then I had another uncle, actually, my dad's side, he was in the signals corps.
Wow.
And he served in Italy, similar thing. Italy and the Netherlands, similar thing though. Didn't talk a lot about it.
Yeah. I can relate. I had a grandfather. He passed away now, but he served in World War II, British Indian Armored Corps, 11th Cavalry Regiment, tanker in Burma. Wow. So campaign against the Japanese and during that time. And, I never got a chance to hear any of his stories, but it sucked because my family could never really tell me about his service because he was very withdrawn about talking about it. And I wish I learned about his history. Yeah. But hearing you talk about yours, like it's almost like I can kind of relate, in a way. But yeah, sir, sorry, throwing it back to you.
One of the things that comes to mind as well about the CAF is one of the few times I saw uniformed soldiers in my town or in the area was the ice storm in 97.
Wow, no way.
So that was, obviously there was this big ice storm, right?
Yeah.
Power was out for weeks on end. And so that was one of the few times I remember seeing soldiers, and like what they were doing was helping Canadians, right? Like helping people I knew who had been without power. And so that left an impression on me a bit. And later on, sort of loop it back to the podcast, because General Hillier actually wrote about the ice storm and about some floods that happened in Manitoba. And like what struck him about it was that he saw Canadians interacting with soldiers. And it was like a rare circumstance where some Canadians had never been exposed to the CAF at all, and what a great impression soldiers made on the public.
Yeah.
And so that's having lived that as like a teenager during the ice storm, I definitely can appreciate his observation. And I think he spoke about that time as what really like formed his opinion in his approach to outreach and public affairs, and taking down barriers between soldiers and the public, because he felt like there's always risks when you do that, right? But the risks are worth it, because when it resonates so well. And that's one of the reasons why I love this podcast so much and what you're doing, is because that impression I had, and because of things General Hillier has said that resonated with me. It just left such a great impression on me at that time.
I appreciate it, sir.
Yeah.
Hearing you talk about that, like the domestic operations, that was the first mission I ever deployed on Op Lentis. And we were the second company to roll out from 1 RCR. Yeah, I deployed with Charles Company, and that at the time it was Sergeant Major Sealock of Charles Company. Yeah. And when we rolled out, it was an incredible opportunity. You hear about Dom Ops, you hear about expeditionary missions, but this being my first mission, and the people I'm here to help are Canadians. And I was in the community of Westmeath. And it was a very interesting, a very rewarding experience. A lot of hard work. There was hardships involved in it, but it's all relative. But I was so thankful to have an opportunity to give back to my own country and to connect with people, especially the communities out there who don't really interface as much with the military as much. But wow, like getting to bond with the community and being embedded with it, you know, almost like a partner force in a way,
Yeah.
where we're here to be intimate in supporting them.
Yeah.
And so living in their hockey arena, and then how much support they gave us. These people showed up to the hockey arena and started cooking lunches for us every day, a hot lunch for us every day and a hot dinner every day. Took a lot off the Army logistically to support us, but it really built such a substantial relationship between us. And it also made us invest more into the success and the outcome of that mission. Because now it's like, we're not just here to help Canadians, like there's a face to it now.
Yeah, we're helping Bob there. Who needs to be dinner.
Yeah. And it's like, I got no problem filling thousands of sandbags every day and wading through freezing deep water up to my chest and, you know, doing all that stuff, having a cold shower to come home to every day. It was an amazing opportunity, a very rewarding opportunity. I can see why like Hillier had such a profound experience with that.
Yeah. Ironically, though, I've never done a mission like that. Wow. So, like, even though that made an impression on me, that's part of why I joined, I never did anything like that. All the operations I've been involved with have all been different. And especially my first one, when I went to Kandahar, was nothing at all like the ice storm, right? Yeah.
That's incredible, sir. Let's talk about that. So was that the first deployment?
Yeah, that was my first deployment. It was a crazy time for me because although I'd spent a year at 2 RCR, I was untrained, so I still was wearing the infantry cap badge. I wasn't a badged member of the RCR, and I did some on-the-job training there. I filled in as acting OC recce because there was just no one there at the time. I was mostly I don't want to make it more than it was. I was mostly doing file reviews and administration for them and morning PT and just usual normal junior officer platoon commander stuff. There was no like big battalion maneuver going on at that time or anything, but still a great experience to hang out with those people. And a lot of the soldiers from that platoon, actually, like Sergeant Major Hatcher, you know, from 3 RCR here, he was like a private or a corporal, I think a private still at that point.
No way.
In that platoon when I showed up unbadged. And so like connections I made back then like followed me to all the way to today. You know. Anyhow, so I did that and then went back on my training on my to my last infantry course. And then I actually was a last minute sort of replacement for another platoon commander who something came up, he couldn't deploy. And so I was sort of parachuted in at the last second and was frantically trying to learn everyone's name. I remember distinct memories of having a platoon commander book. We used to have these books that we made with like a profile on every soldier in the platoon, paper copies.
Wow.
That big book. And I was reading that on the plane on the way to Wainwright to do our final, what for them was the final validation before deploying to Kandahar.
And you're just integrating.
But for me, I was just integrating at that point.
Wow.
And the first thing I did was a level 5 or like a subunit company level combat team attack as a platoon commander in that combat team. And so it was very intense. I went from 0 all the way up to full throttle.
What was that like for you? Like, how did you?
Frankly, it was terrifying.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
Yeah.
That would crush people.
Stress. But I would say the key is, and that's something else that served me well, is I realized early that I needed that it's a team, right? So you can't do anything yourself. And if we succeeded as a team, it was because I had these fantastic NCOs there who mentored me along and made sure every step of the way that we were set up to succeed. And so like from day one arriving in that platoon, I felt extremely well supported. And it was very obvious to me from the start that everyone wanted to win. Everyone wanted to succeed, and that we would only succeed working together. And so that was what saved it, so to speak, what otherwise was a very trying time. And then same with those NCOs, I've made relationships with them that have lasted me, stood the test of time to this day as well, for sure.
What year was that, sir?
That was in the fall of 2006.
Wow. So now the military's transitioning into combat operations,
Yeah.
right? And at that point, is that what you're expecting? You're going on a combat deployment?
Yes, because as we're getting ready, there are stories coming back about what's going on in Kandahar, and at that time there was like Ab Medusa was going on and all this, and so it was starting to take a lot of casualties, and things were getting very intense in Kandahar at that time, and so it was very clear to us that we were going into probably a fight, and that it would be very, very trying. So that's what kind of contributed to the pucker factor, if you will,
No doubt.
of getting ready and getting parachuted into that platoon at the 11th hour, just as they're going out the door.
So with workup training being successful, and now you being integrated and taking over that platoon, what was it like going into country?
Yeah, so
Is this the first time you left Canada, or like?
I traveled a bit growing up, but it was definitely my first deployment. And really, like, I just remember trying to be a sponge as much as possible, like a lot of unknowns. I remember distinctly deploying from Kandahar airfield into the forward operating area, into Fob Massamdar, it was called. But I had no frame of reference for anything, right? So like getting on the helicopters to deploy, like I thought like maybe we would be landing under contact or something. Like obviously it turned out not to be anything like that, but in my head I'd built up these scenarios where like from day one we would be under contact.
Like in it.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess in a lot of ways, it turned out to be easier than the nightmares scenarios you imagine, right? So that was somewhat comforting in the first months that, things were kind of calm. It was winter. Typically, they called it the fighting season didn't start until the spring or the summer, right? So we arrived in January, February. It was Task Force 107, and I was in hotel company at the time. And yeah, and so we had a couple months where things were relatively more quiet, and I remember just trying to absorb as much as possible from the outgoing team.
What was it like to go from your training scenarios in Wainwright at the time to now being on real patrols?
Yeah, I felt actually that the training prepared us extremely well. Like there were certain things, dealing with IEDs at the time was somewhat new, but they had such a we had such a well-rehearsed or forming sort of system of taking lessons back from missions and injecting them into our training at CMTC in Wainwright, that they were taking sort of real life scenarios that they'd faced on operations, and they had people even coming back from theater directly to be mentoring us during our training. And so like I felt the training prepared us quite well, actually, in hindsight. There were still unknowns, like IEDs were relatively new to us anyway at that point. So we knew sort of what to do, but there was still some gray areas on how to mitigate. And so that caused some anxiety about like, okay, we knew what to do sort of post incident, but like the box searches, the vital point searches were somewhat new at that point. So, at one point there were different techniques anyway we would use. Those were just being kind of refined as we went. So that there was a lot of anxiety around that, and that actually turned out to be a big issue during my deployment. And as much as we tried to learn from previous rotations, actually, our adversary there were evolving so quickly that oftentimes things that your predecessor told you worked for them wouldn't work for you.
It wasn't relevant anymore.
Yeah, which is something that I didn't realize at the time, but is an important lesson I took forward from there, is just to take with a grain of salt when you come in. Definitely heed advice, but also remain open to situations changing, because like my predecessor, for instance, his platoon had been struck with a bicycle IED, and they'd had many casualties. And for him, that meant he should stay in the vehicles more and use the protection of the labs as much as possible. But then while I was there, they triggered on us. They observed that we were doing that, and then subsequently built bigger and bigger IEDs built to defeat the LAV. And so that became a liability for us. And then so after our deployment, then we went more dismounted again, and then they shifted tactics, and suddenly there was all these IEDs and booby traps on dismounted avenues of approach. So it's just important to always be on your toes and observing what's happening and adapting, because really it's whoever adapts quicker has the advantage, right?
Yeah, that's an incredible lesson learned right there.
Yeah.
Wow. So that deployment, what would you say would be I guess that's a lot of great advice there, right? Like heeding the advice of the outgoing force, taking what you can, keeping an open mind to how the circumstances, the situation is occurring in your deployments, and adapting to that. And it's like a game of jiu-jitsu or Rubik's Cube. But for every action the enemy takes, you take one. For everything you do, the enemy does. And it just goes back and forth until you go home.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah, like for someone who joined the military in 2000 with the intention of becoming a pilot, like I don't think anybody was anticipating war.
No,
like that's incredible.
Yeah, it was quite surreal.
Yeah,
to find myself in a combat team in Western Afghanistan doing what I was doing. It was pretty incredible.
How old were you?
At that time, I was like 23 years old. So another interesting thing too was I was very young, and I was the same age as a lot of like the private soldiers, so like the NCOs at that time, which at the time they seemed like much older than me, but now I would see them as quite young. But I actually had, as a person, that's another thing that left an impression on me. As a person, I felt I had a lot more in common sometimes with the soldiers than I did with the NCOs and like the company leadership, which I felt like reflecting on was interesting to me at the time.
Sir, do you think you need to have how did you manage that relationship dynamic then? Like they talk about having like a professional boundary sometimes, right, between the officers and the NCMs. So did you have any kind of conflicts with that or challenges with that? And how did you kind of adapt your relationship dynamic?
Yeah, I feel like that is true, and it is wise to maintain a certain amount of professional distance. But like, here's the thing. If you're living in a steel box with 10 people in a space that's like 4 feet wide by 4 feet wide, you're going to develop a close personal relationship.
Yeah, it's hard not to be intimate.
You'd have to be a robot not to. So like I got really close with my crew, and I got really close with my platoon. It's just inevitable, right? At that level of leadership, I think it's a real challenge. Like there was always like, I think maybe it just became, we all knew when it was time to be serious and when it was time to relax. And so we kind of had maybe a split personality that way, and that's kind of how you manage that, I think. But the boundaries were certainly like down quite far by the end of that 6 or 7 months together. I mean, because you're just living through so much together, right? You become really close.
On that deployment, did you take any casualties?
Yeah, so that was probably one of the most memorable or things that stuck with me from that deployment is I was actually very unfortunate to have lost six of my team members in a single massive IED strike. So it happened on Easter, the Easter weekend on the 8th of April. And so what it was is we were moving to set up an RRB, like a radio rebroadcasting site, because we were doing a massive convoy escort. There were these big convoys, contracted convoys that were heading west of Kandahar into Helmand province to support the Brits who were out there. At that time, there was a lot going on in Helmand. There was a big operation going on there. And so we escorted this huge convoy. It was kind of supposed to be my day to pull security, secure the leaguer. We weren't expecting to do much that day. But suddenly got called out to go and set up an RRB radio rebroadcast site because we lost comms with the convoy. So this was a contingency we'd planned for, and I knew what I would do. And anyway, we ended up. I went straight through the desert, knowing that was probably the least risky option. But there was a choke point, and in hindsight, there were a bunch of indicators that myself and my team missed. But the lead vehicle hit a massive triple stacked IED, and it was offset so that the explosives were set under the troop compartment. They actually measured the dimensions of the lav, and this is where I'm talking about the enemy or our adversary adapting and us needing to adapt our TTPs faster than them. Because they'd really templated us. They knew the dimensions of the lab. They knew the route we might likely take. All these things they'd done.
Wow.
And it was just a perfect storm. Lead vehicle hit it, and a massive explosion, throwing parts of the vehicle hundreds of meters away. And then it came like very chaotic. Everyone, at first it wasn't even obvious what it was.
Were you just in the lab in the back?
Just right behind. I was just behind the lead vehicle.
Wow, so you felt felt it.
Yeah, for sure. And it was clear that it was like a catastrophic explosion right away. And it was very chaotic because they told me at that time that I might be in an on-march minefield, which we didn't have on our maps. Turned out that wasn't the case, but that made it all very complex. And then it all became, treating casualties, evacuating them, securing, setting up a cordon, and then all the stuff that goes with recovering from a blast like that.
You talk about having like this very strong, intimate relationship with your platoon, right? It's like you become like a family, when you're that intimate and such in an experience like that. And then you have a catastrophic event, and I can only imagine a person has to be able to like separate themselves from like knowing that these are people that you care and love, and to do your job.
Exactly.
And like,
that's exactly. So I would say a lot of, I think, and I stressed a lot about this, about like what I would do in that situation. And I think it's a source of anxiety for a lot of people, but what I found at the time was that you really just, it's a bit of a trope. It's a bit of a cliche, but you really revert to your training. And, the worst thing you can do in that situation is not do your job. And so that is the first thing that kind of came to mind for me. And so I just knew, and I think everyone there, from what I observed, knew that they had to compartmentalize that. Like now it's time to do a job, and like we're going to feel later, right? And it was actually my team, their reaction really spurred me to do my job better.
What do you mean?
Because I just had this vivid memory of the driver of the vehicle that was struck. He came out of the vehicle with his rifle on his shoulder.
Wow.
Looking for threats.
Of the lab that was struck that catastrophic explosion, out ready to fight.
Yeah. So that to me gave me a lot of strength.
These acts of courage that you witness, it's when you read these citations of valor, what I found profound that makes me kind of like feel this sense of like spirit in the citation is when you see the line that talks about the person instilled and inspired the will to fight in the rest of the people under overwhelming odds, and being inspired by that private coming out of his hatch after they just got the shit kicked out of them from a massive IED and just ready to do his job. It's hard not for you to feel a sense of so many emotions and thoughts in the same time, but you feel inspiration when you see that.
Yeah, and I think that's what I think soldiers don't understand. People think like, it must be hard to lead, but like we're all leading all the time, right? We're all setting our teams up to succeed. And, so soldiers can their reaction, it's contagious, right? So like if I act a certain way, it may inspire, and if they act a certain way,
Mhm.
it may inspire, and it just becomes this positive feedback loop of everyone wanting to do their best and not let anyone down,
Yeah.
and you can really build on each other. It's a source of a lot of strength, I think. And so for me in that moment, it just came about not letting that soldier down, right? And so I was able to focus and do what I had to do. And then the time to grieve was important. Like that had to come, but it came later, right?
I appreciate you for sharing that, sir. Like, it's not easy to want to talk about these things, and
Yeah.
and you know, it really, like, I've already have a profound sense of appreciation for you, but just to hear some of these stories that are not privy to many people, thank you. Like, for me, it makes me want to just like do a better job, you know, for my guys. And I think I feed off of your experiences, and I think this is an important part of the podcast, especially for a lot of us who either came through at a time where we were nurtured by people from your generation of service, or people who are coming in right now listening to this who are so far removed from the war in Afghanistan now, generationally, that they need to hear these things, to hear about the the great actions and the great character involved in people who've experienced what you have in the circumstances of war. You know, like, this is something that I think is challenging to facilitate and instill in people, and it's important for us to leverage the experiences of those who have gone before us and have done done these things. I'm sorry, sir, I sound like an idiot right now, but
No, I appreciate it. And like I still that experience has really stuck with me, obviously through the years, and I still think back to the reaction of my team on that day, and it's still a source of strength. That tour though wasn't totally defined by that experience. From there, we moved into more of a static posture, and another interesting experience I had on that deployment was working closely with a district chief of police. And it really, the job my platoon was given, I was sort of separate away from the rest of the company on my own. And I was given a little area of operations and teamed up with the local chief of police. And we became what was kind of, we didn't know at the time, but the precursor for the police mentoring teams.
the Pomlet
The
teams.
Palma teams. But I was just an infantry, like a battle group infantry platoon commander. It was just, it became obvious because of the task I'd been given with my own Leo that I needed to tie in, and they'd co-located me with this guy. And so I developed a pretty good working relationship with him, and then noticed, well, hey, these guys would be a lot more effective if they had a little bit more ammo. And so trying to find them ammo, and then they would share information with me, and that helped me do my job better. And so like no one had coached me on how to partner in this way, but it just became obvious that that's what needed to be done. And then later on, this all became formalized in these mentoring and liaison teams. I think they existed at the time. It's just not where we were.
Interesting.
And that became a theme for the rest of my career, where I've been involved in capacity building missions over and over and over again. And I think probably we're all going to see more of that in the future. But that was that very first deployment. It started there, and then it led into every operational deployment I've had has had some type of aspect of that to it.
Yeah, like I can relate with our op unifier experience being in England, and
That's right, yeah.
and working with so many different partner force nations, and then trying to capacity build in our allies.
Yeah.
And that was such an incredible experience for me, being an NCO over there. And I guess we're very fortunate to have had a commanding officer at your level with the experiences that you've had from, I guess, decades now. Very privileged to have had the command team and the core of leaders that we had in that deployment. Sir, so with your deployment with Afghanistan, where did your career go after that?
So after that, I was fortunate. I got to stay on as a platoon commander for another year. So that was great. Obviously, I would go back to do that job again. Platoon command is the best job.
The best job?
Oh yeah, hands down, the best job for an infantry officer. There's no question. So I was very happy to spend an extra year as a platoon commander. And then I got to do the next best job, which is to teach platoon commanders. I went to the infantry school in New Brunswick still, and I instructed platoon commanders there for 3 years.
What was that like now?
Incredible. I loved my time teaching. I think it's the next best thing, right behind operational deployment.
Mm-hmm.
The next best thing we can do as soldiers is to teach. And like, it's so motivating. I had a good NCO once told me that I would never truly understand something until I taught it.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that stuck with me, and those words are true, I think, because you're never more motivated to teach, to know something well, as you know, than right before you had to stand up in front of someone and explain it to them, right? And so it was great because I got to spend so much time reflecting on my experience as a platoon commander, and then trying to pass those lessons on, within the confines of the course you're given. But it also helped me to unpack like mistakes I'd made and how I might have done things better, and how I might do things better and at the next bound, at company command or as a staff officer. I found it was really valuable experience to me at that time teaching. And then I got to do as well at that time, I got to go on some advanced training. I got to do the reconnaissance course, and had a great mentor there. He's passed away since, but Larry Sanford was this guy's name. He was a CFR, great mentor of mine. He spent a lot of time coaching me, and I learned a lot from him. And then I ran the reconnaissance cell, and then back to 2 RCR for another deployment, this time on Operation Attention, which was again to Afghanistan, but this time in a different role. This was pure capacity building focused mission, where I went with a small team. I was the deputy commander of a small mentoring team that was in the north of Afghanistan in Balkh province on the Uzbekistan border.
Wow.
And we partnered with some of, like, so for the military audience, they'd be familiar with the like area training center, like in Meaford or in Wainwright. So this was like the Afghan army equivalent of that in the north, and there was like 4 or 5 of these around the country, and they were producing soldiers for the Afghan army, and so helping them.
And what was that experience like now? Like, you're embedded with an Afghan school institution?
Yeah.
And are you, I guess you have like a Western chain of command?
That's right.
But do you also report to an Afghan chain of command?
No. So like we were partnered with them. So they had their chain of command and we had ours, but it was a massive enterprise. So like there were advisors at every level of the ANA chain of command. And so in our chain of command, there were mentors to the Afghan army who were above us, so to speak, on the Afghan side. So, but it was pretty complex because there's the ANA chain, right? Then there's our national chain, and then I was actually reporting on the coalition side to an American chain of command. And so you have that was an important lesson. I think maybe the most important lesson from that deployment was just managing that, like who needs to know what, like who has what authority over what, and how to manage reporting to like two or three bosses at the same time. It's a useful skill because when we deploy, often we deploy almost always as part of a coalition, and so like understanding that, having a national commander and a coalition commander, and how to manage those relationships is very important. And so I was able to.
Have you ever seen that like go badly?
Yes. Yeah. I think definitely. I mean, I made mistakes there about like not understanding who's responsible for what, right? And because you can find yourself like barking up the wrong tree, so to speak, right? Like you need to know who's responsible for what. Otherwise, you're just making noise. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I may have made some noise over the years before I figured things out, and maybe still.
Man. I'm not one to judge. I made a lot of noise in my career.
Yeah. That's one of your best qualities. Yeah. And then the other interesting thing about that deployment is, so on our national chain of command, right?
Yeah.
So on my team, we didn't work day to day with these folks, but nationally we were responsible for them. There was also a hospital up there, and we had a medical team of medical specialists who were mentoring the Afghan military hospital up there too. And so that gave me an in-depth exposure to like health service support and how that works, and specifically medical specialists, who are a very interesting niche part of the HSS world, where these people, they sort of get a minimum exposure to the military, but their day-to-day is they work in like clinics or hospitals in Canada. And so we had people like surgeons. I had a nephrologist, a kidney expert, right?
Yeah.
Who is like 90% nephrologist, 10% CAF member, right? And so I had very like basic threshold knowledge of what it was to be in the CAF, but here they were doing their job under adverse conditions in Afghanistan. So
That's
it was
incredible.
really interesting working with them too, and the thread, of course, that led back to my first operational experience was the experience of capacity building, right? And so like I was able, and we were all really able to draw from the experience in our first deployment. There was many of the same people on that team back then who deployed again alongside me on this second deployment. And we applied some of the lessons that we learned there.
That's amazing. I can kind of relate with that, sir, because I've had some experiences with different deployments leading up to the last one I did, which was Op Globe, deployed with an air task force with the Canadian Medical Emergency Response Team, and myself as well. I'm working with an OC who I'm embedded with to provide him force protection, and I'm integral to his team. And how he utilized us wasn't doctrinally understood by the rest of the battalion, because I had to explain it back home to Sergeant Major about why I have to do all this medical training there.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, you're there to be security. I'm like, no, you don't get it, sir. Like, I'm here to enable their application of being a force multiplier.
Yeah.
And it's like, when the bird lifts off from the point of injury with our casualties, I can either sit there with my seatbelt on, or I get in there and be useful and be now a force multiplier. And so the OC was very invested in turning us into that. And this is a gentleman who, just to give a shout out, Andrew McLaren, amazing, incredible human being, first Canadian to graduate from the London School of Medicine, and spends his time not only being an emergency room ICU doctor, he's like riding in paramedic vehicles because he loves being in the trenches in his field. You know, he doesn't have to do this. But near the end of what a pinnacle of a career, he's doing stuff like this. But he started his journey in Kandahar as a civilian doctor. And it inspired him to want to become an Air Force reservist medical officer. And from that, developing this air medevac capability along the way, and CMERT being one of the first CMERT deployments into Mali, treating UN mass casualties, and then bringing all of this experience now to Cyprus, where I'm now being mentored by this person who I never expected to. I showed up there with this attitude where I'm like, the fuck some doctor gonna tell me what to do? I'm a goddamn NCO from Para Company. You know what I mean? I swear to God, sir. I swear to God. I went through fucking 3 RCR. You know what I mean? And like, people knew I was an NCO because the Air Force is very different. But like, oh my God, it didn't take long until I realized how invested he was in the mission. And once we had this very quick chat, and I ain't going to say how the conversation went, but we had this very quick chat as a team. And once I knew they were all in, and that I could be like, all right, I'll these people, I'll leave my life for them kind of deal. We had that kind of conversation. And so I knew he was all in, and that was it. It was just like, I am your student now. I'm your sergeant, but I'm your student. Like, whatever you need, sir. Whatever you fucking need. If that pilot gives you attitude again, sir, you just got to tell me. I swear to God. Anyways, I'm not going to go into those stories, but
it's mission time, right?
Oh, man.
It's mission time.
Yo, we are now a unit.
Yeah.
Right? And you don't talk to my sir like that. You know what I mean? Anyways. Okay, edit that. So, we're on this mission, and this gentleman who is a reservist who spends 90% of his time civilian side, doing what he does as an amazing medical officer in the civvy world, now is like volunteering to take pay cuts to come overseas. Yo, the man's volunteering. He's losing 50%. 50% 50% people. Anyways, so I was so thankful for that mission to be tapped by the company, by the battalion, to be able to go there. And I'm so glad I have experiences capacity building and like networking, because I really needed to do that. Like, we deployed on a task force. I'm not going to talk about limitations and constraints that were like self-induced by, like, you know, they didn't plan for certain people to be there. And so anyways,
That's
figuring
always the
things
case,
out.
though.
It's
It's
always
not-
the case.
you know,
It's an emergency deployment.
yeah.
It's like, how much time you got? Let's go.
Exactly.
Let's go. We'll figure it out. Amazon the shit that we don't have, you know?
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
and I love it. You know, it's exciting. Like, you're just in the chaos of it and figuring things out.
We don't get called for the easy jobs.
Yeah.
Right? So like if it was easy, we wouldn't be there.
And that's-
the thing, you know. So
Yeah.
So how could you be prepared? It's never going to be simple.
No. And I think that's why the infantry naturally fosters entrepreneurial skills.
Yeah.
And the officer corps and the NCO corps, and even in my NCMs, from day one in DP1, we're teaching them accountability, but we're teaching them how to be solution-oriented problem solvers. And that's what we do. And like, if the circumstances are high risk combat, or if it's a different type of risk, whatever it is, we'll adapt. And whatever the problem is, we'll figure it out. And hopefully, you know, we have a great team of people supporting us back home so we can get what we need. But anyways, I'm talking too much, sir. I need to shut up. Over to you, sir.
No, I relate. I can see you can relate. I saw you nodding when I was talking about the medical specialist.
Yeah.
You totally get it, because that's exactly it. Like I didn't say it, but the pay cut thing,
Yeah.
it definitely resonated with me.
It's
And now that you
inspiring.
said it, thinking back,
Yeah.
I did think of that. You know, like these people are taking a severe hit to their quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes we may feel like we're, you know, we volunteered to be here, but sometimes it feels like we don't have many alternatives, right? But these people
like-
can do anything, right?
It's like, let me get this straight. You didn't need to be here. Like, man, you would have got paid more for just being back home.
That's right. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I think there are benefits though for them as well.
Yeah.
Because they get the experience in an environment that they can't get in Canada or in
Yeah.
America, right? So I think, not to say that they're self-interested, but I think there are professional benefits for them to go do this work. But yeah, for sure the risks outweigh the benefits. And it comes down to, they, like us, they want to serve something greater than themselves.
yeah, I think so.
And in a way, oftentimes they have a lot more to lose. And so that's why I think it makes an impression, right? Like these people taking their time to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said, sir. You know, I don't just want to focus on operational deployments here, but if there is any other memorable experiences that you had that you would like to share about any of the operations you've have done post Afghanistan, is there anything that comes to mind that was like worth sharing with everyone here?
Yeah. So I guess the other experiences I had were I did the Roto Zero of Unifier.
Whoa. Okay.
So we were the first team deploying out of one RCR to go and do that.
So your career went from 2 RCR
Yeah.
to 1
Yeah.
RCR.
Yeah. In fact, in between there as well, I did a year in Ottawa. I spent a year as the aide to the Army commander,
Okay.
which was an interesting job and also chaotic, but in a different way.
How do you describe that
tempo.
job?
Well, that's to put it succinctly is hard, but basically you do whatever you're needed to do, right? So it was for me, it was a lot of planning travel and, you know, managing, helping to manage relationships with people that were important relationships that were important to the Army commander and important to the Army.
Who was it at the time?
It was General Haynes.
Okay.
General Haynes, he retired after being the Army commander. It was 2014, and now I believe he's the colonel of the regiment for the Vandus. Yeah, so working with him, and it was also Chief Warrant Officer Hornbrook was the Army Sergeant Major at the time, so I spent a lot of time with Chief Hornbrook as well. Yeah, and it's just really eye-opening about you know, what happens at the strategic level in the CAF. You know, for a captain to be exposed to that stuff, I learned a lot of lessons about how things work and how they don't work. And, you know, and I think the number one impression, if this may offend, so I risk offending, but the thing that I most took away from that was actually how little authority the commander of the Army has, and how much of his work is managing all the different stakeholders that he needs to have in agreement before he can accomplish anything. Right? So because at that level, it's almost impossible to do something on your own. Like one person can't come in and suddenly say, I'm going to steer this organization in another direction. Or to put it more accurately, you can say that, but it won't happen, right? You need to have others in other parts of the CAF supporting everything you do. And a lot of time and effort is taken to socialize things and build consensus and build teams to accomplish things. So like at that time, they were trying to find a role for light forces, for instance. That was one of the things. There was deficit reduction happening, and so that impacted, how much the Army could train, and so a lot of talk about like how to allocate resources and that kind of thing. And then just the sort of like military diplomacy, traveling all around the world, building consensus with allies, going to the Conference of European Armies in Germany or in Colombia with the American armies. Or
can I ask you, like, when you go to these kind of events, like, you don't got to get specific with details, but like, I'm picturing some sterile like business as like, what do you think about this idea, right? Like, do people get emotional in these meetings? Like, do people get mad? Do people like call people out? Like, you don't have to tell me any examples, but like, am I imagining like how it could happen in a platoon where someone proposes an idea and it's like, that's fucking stupid?
Yeah, like that's rare. That is rare. A lot of it is a lot more subtle, but like the interesting stuff happens in the margins though, right? It's like, how do the different groups allocate their time when they're not in a meeting? Who are they talking to? What are they talking about? That's where the interesting stuff happened. The one-on-ones on the side.
Is that where a lot of the business goes down?
Yeah, I think that's where like new business is tabled, right? That's where like new ideas are spoken about, or where things that people really care about but can't say openly to everyone. If they're trying to build a relationship in a certain part of the world or with another partner, that's how that's dealt
Those
with.
offline conversations.
Yeah.
They're equally as important, if not just as important or more important.
Yeah, or like you'll see, someone will bring up like this piece of equipment that their industry is trying to sell or something. You just tell how what people's equities are in those like kind of closer form things. I won't mention any specific examples, but like one of the things that's pretty well known now is like at the time the French government was trying to sell these Mistral class troop ships. They were like landing craft. I'm misusing the language here, but essentially they're like troop carriers.
From ship to shore.
Yeah, exactly. And part of the reason why was that they'd been built for Russia, and then there was the invasion of Ukraine, and then it was no longer acceptable to be selling these ships, so they were for other partners to sell to. And so that was a topic of discussion there, and that manifested in talk of like a littoral capable element in the Army at that time, for instance. So that kind of thing.
Okay, that's interesting. So like, you get posted to be the aide. Yeah. Like, is this something you wanted to do? Was this ever a thought you wanted to do? Like, how did you get informed?
Definitely not. So I don't want to throw anyone under the bus here, but what happened, it was a surprise to me. I sat down with my career manager and he said, "So you've been nominated for this position." And I had no idea. I guess someone was probably supposed to have told me before the career manager. I don't know. But so then I interviewed for the position, and I got excited about it after the fact. It just never entered my mind.
Right.
As someone who was totally tactically focused, that this could be a job that I could do, that would be interesting. I knew nothing about it. So it turned out to be a pretty intense experience. Intense in a different way, in a
Right.
new way, in terms of like tempo and like long hours and like different type of work.
Right.
'Cause I'd learn something new. But it turned out to benefit me, I think, both professionally and like personally.
Would you recommend it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, definitely. It was humbling, right? Because you aren't important, right? Like it's true also as a platoon commander that you as an individual aren't important. It's about the team, but it's just, you know, you have to really put your personal interests aside and you know, be on call, be available.
You're enabling the army commander.
Exactly.
Yeah, like integral to his support.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Sir, so from that position, you now get posted to 1 RCR?
Yeah.
All right, so you're
Yeah,
getting
promoted,
spooled up.
posted, and then suddenly this new mission comes online, which became Unifier, and Roto Zeros are Roto Zero, of course, is what we call the first deployment into a new theater. So the standing up a new operation from nothing is they're unique, and they're always a lot of work, which I didn't know going into it, but I certainly learned. And there was a lot of time pressure to get ready quickly, and so again, like a lot of concurrent activity and teamwork.
How much notice did you have?
So it turned out that it did drag on. The prep did drag on, but initially we thought we might only have like a few weeks notice.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out that it was a few months. But initially we had to smash something together in a few weeks to be ready to go.
What did your contingent look like when you deployed on the Roto Zero?
So we actually built the sort of the team structure. I flew over with my CO at the time was now General Guinea, and a representative from the Canadian Joint Operations Command, CJOC, which was now the Army Commander, General Wright. He was a colonel at the time. He went over with us. And my sergeant major, I think, was with us, and we went over to Wiesbaden in Germany with U.S. Army Europe, and because they had a team going in to do similar work as to what we were doing to do, and did some coordination with them. And basically, we just held discussions with them and sort of riffed on what the mission should look like, and so that we could be complementary, and then sketched out an organization that could achieve kind of the tasks that we're thinking we were going to want to achieve when we got there. And we built a structure and then went out the door. Actually, another person who was key in this was my replacement here at 3 RCR, Aaron Corey.
No way.
He was the OPSO for that deployment. So I worked closely with him.
Wow.
Yeah, for that mission. And it was like a lot of decentralized work. So like once we figured out the bones of what we wanted to accomplish, we built out sort of the training package and then dispersed it down to kind of NCO level, where they built the actual, concurrently they built out the different parts of the training. And then we took it there on a bit of like an advanced party to go sort of test the courseware, test it on the Ukrainian instructors that we would later work with. They gave us feedback on what we were planning to teach, sort of a short, sharp engagement, and then we went back in with more coherent product. We brought vehicles, weapons, all the ammunition, everything we would need for the training, and then just went from there. Ran a couple serials.
You mentioned feedback many times since we've had this podcast interview start, and you know I find that it's such an important concept to make sure that we action that, or we execute like an after action review.
Yeah.
You know, I've learned the hard way myself, like when you're just so tired and done with the task that you just want to fucking go home and you just want to move on with this, especially if you didn't have a good experience.
Yeah.
But I argued that I learned the hard way that if we don't spend the time on that, it can
So
really,
vital.
oh my
So
God, so vital.
Yeah.
And it pays dividends down the road when
It
we
really
do.
does. Yeah.
Was there ever a time where you had any issues with trying to facilitate that and then you kind of convinced people, or did you have any kind of positive or negative experiences with that?
No, definitely positive. Like the biggest thing that was one of the, and that's why it comes to mind now, is that was one of the biggest lessons we learned is when building something like that, like it's vital that you test it before you, even if it's select. We only had a small amount of time, and so we picked only the most problematic lessons. So like the stuff we weren't sure about, that's what we showed them first, to be like, do we have this right? Like, we have a doubt, like, so what do you think, kind of thing. And then we extrapolated the lessons that we learned from that little test, that little experiment, and we spread it across the whole training package.
Wow. That's an interesting point you just made there. You're like, you focused on what is the most problematic when you have such a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's how you would prioritize.
Yeah, there were certain things that we knew, we were pretty sure, I'm sure we were wrong in some instances. We still had to tweak those things, but it was the stuff we weren't sure about. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you don't want to sacrifice your credibility too. You know, you want to appear credible, but like choosing the stuff that we weren't sure about, and some of it we confirmed we were wrong, and some we confirmed we were right. It is interesting though that some of the things we had a doubt about and got negative feedback on, for instance, tank hunting teams, right? This idea that you can have small teams of soldiers with anti-armor missiles out doing hasty ambushes of adversary armored columns or individual vehicles. The initial feedback we got from them was that, like, this is insane. Like, we would never do this, right? But it's interesting because years later, on my second deployment on Unifier, we were getting feedback that that there was this new tactic where they were sending out small teams of soldiers with anti-armor weapons and ambushing tanks, right? And how successful it was. It's a radical idea, right? So that was an example of something where, you know, we got feedback that it wasn't good, but then, hey, it turned out to be a good thing. So it's just
interesting.
You know, it's just another example of like having an open mind, right? Like your first bit of feedback, like seek the feedback, but just, you know, keep in mind it's just one person's opinion sometimes, right?
Well said, sir.
Double-edged sword, right?
Yeah. I find a lot of things that can be double-edged swords, and you need good perspective and a good attitude to really foster the best or get the best out of your potential.
Yeah.
You know? Man, this is great. You're a great guest, eh, sir? Like, we should have did this on day one, man.
Oh, you make it easy.
Oh, man, you make it easy, sir. Thank you. To be honest, like, we've been going for an hour. Are you still good?
Yeah, I'm good.
We still got battery? All right, man. So, Op Unifier, Roto Zero, it's done now. Where does your career go from there? Are you still at 1 RCR?
Yeah, so still at 1 RCR, and basically at that point I do some time in the admin company there, so doing like logistics administration for the battalion, and then I move into the deputy commander role, the DCO role at 1 RCR. Have a great time there. We deployed on a big exercise, Maple Resolve in Wainwright, 2017, and I got to be the DCO there. And then from then forward, as the DCO, it was preparation for op reassurance, so one of the earlier rotos in Latvia. And for that, I was chief of staff for the multinational battle group in Latvia.
Can you tell us about chief of staff? Like, what's this job? Like, what do you do?
Yeah. So like being a chief of staff, it's about managing and leading the headquarters. So it's about ensuring that basically the commander is supported in commanding the battle group, and that the subunits are enabled to accomplish their missions in a nutshell. And to do that, there's a bunch of specialists, staff specialists that you have to lead, and they generally are very proficient at their work. And your job as the chief of staff is to kind of make sure they're all working together.
Mm.
And to do that, it's important to kind of, the popular catchphrase is inch deep, mile wide.
What do you mean by that?
So inch deep, mile wide means you don't dig into any particular issue too deeply.
Mm.
Because when you're doing that, you're losing focus on other things that are going on concurrently, right? So you can't afford to spend too much time looking into any one particular issue. You kind of have to stand back and keep an eye on everything at once. Because while you're digging into this little issue over here, there's going to be a fire over here that you're not paying attention to. And so one of the big things I think successful chiefs of staff learn, and certainly what I learned, although I don't know if I was super successful or not, was that that multitasking, right? And managing time, managing tasks, and keeping teams focused on what matters.
How'd you accomplish that? Like keeping them focused?
Yeah. So one of the important things with managing work like that, I think, is we have a tendency to focus on what's urgent. Right?
Mm.
So like we're always going from one thing to the next and focusing about what is most urgent. But it's also important to consider what's important.
Mm.
So like something can be urgent and not be important. And if you ignore that thing, it'll just go away. So it's important to take stock of what matters and not just what's urgent. And so that's another thing I learned in that job. And also when I was the chief of staff of the brigade, was don't just consider like deadlines and then rack up all your tasks according to how soon they have to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Consider what's important, what needs to be done. Like what of all these things that need to be accomplished, what must I do? What should I do? And what could I do? And then attack it that way.
Is there like any way that you could, is there any way you can coach or mentor someone to help navigate that decision-making process?
Yeah, so I used and still use a tool called the Eisenhower box, where there's 4 boxes.
Eisenhower box?
Yeah, it's because Eisenhower, it was a thing he used. And I may have to check on that, but I think that's
all right.
Anyway, there's 4 categories. There's urgent, critical. There's not urgent, critical. There's not critical, urgent, and not critical, not urgent.
Interesting.
And you put your tasks into those 4 boxes, and you do what's urgent and critical first. And it was very important for me. Some people come naturally to this, but I have a tendency, A, to want to do things that are just urgent, and B, to be fascinated with pet projects. Like I get these things I become obsessed with that I think are important to me. That may not be that important. Just interesting things I like, right? And sometimes I need to be disciplined about like being true to myself about what really matters, Like we all have things we become interested in, like this. Like you probably spend a lot of time on this, right?
Too much time.
It is important, right?
Yeah.
But it's sometimes hard. You got to manage, right? You got to make choices. And then the second thing I think I learned, or the third thing I think I learned in that job was I had such a great opportunity to have this fantastic mentor in my CO, who was then Lieutenant Colonel Steve Beth, who just has an interesting way of looking at the world and an interesting approach to fostering innovation. And we just got into so much like fun, innovative projects. And I watched the way he enabled teams to do things in new ways. And I thought that, wow, that's special. And like, I'd like to be a lot more like that. And so we spent a lot of time talking about like how his approach to these things and like how he was able to motivate people to be innovative and to build new things.
He's an incredible person.
He really is.
I never got to meet him,
Yeah.
but I've been fortunate enough to I've gotten a chance to talk to him, and we've been able to attempt to record an interview. We're gonna do another one, but I'm sorry to take away from this story, but I just want to make a point where to speak to the innovation side of him. right? We're talking about Lieutenant Colonel retired Steve Macbeth, who's no longer in the Canadian Armed Forces. But when I got to 1 RCR, and I was a late bloomer, so I CT'd from the reserves, right? So I got there in 2019, just after his time. And I think your time too. But man, like the impact that he left at 1 RCR was incredible. Huge. Because the way the way people spoke about him with such like reverence because of how innovative he was, how much dedication he put into the regiment and the effort that he put in there. It was amazing. Like the fighting Donnybrook or the fighting competitions that he hosted. But it's not like he just hosted some CQC competition. The man got TriStar Gem from Montreal. And for anybody listening, we're talking about, if you ever heard of the UFC, like George St. Pierre, like a champion fighter, he got his gym, his coach for Hassa Hobby. I believe it was that person who came down. Yeah, it was. Like that is incredible. That is the subject matter expert that he was able to convince that they would be worth his time to come up to Petawawa to 1 RCR to spend his time with the battalion. And you know, he had this creative, amazing project that he made happen that had such a lasting impression, to the point where a guy like me, who wasn't even there for that, was inspired by that. Yeah. You know, and I hope that one day that I can myself demonstrate that in my own way for my troops and try to be as innovative as I can, because it's so important. Yeah. You know, and
one of the interesting things relevant to this like idea about enabling teams to be innovative and do things in new ways was, and one of the things I learned from Steve was about finding what motivates individuals, because like often in the Army, you know, there's like we have a system of incentives that are positive and negative, and it's kind of we have a certain like a one size fits all approach to these incentives that we offer, and it seems obvious, but it wasn't at the time, that like everyone has different things that motivate them. And it really pays huge dividends if you take the time to understand what motivates someone individually, and not just assume that they're interested in the kind of boilerplate or like
stereotypical
standard incentives, right? Like not everyone is interested in that next promotion, or not everyone is motivated by money, for instance, or like rank, or like some people want interesting work that resonates, or they have a very specific idea about what's interesting work, and they want to get to that place to do that job, or they care about their family, and like maybe, you know, like that's okay. Someone can spend more time with their family, and maybe we can find a niche for that person where they can have more time for their family, but then also contribute to the organization in a new and like meaningful way that's really special for them as an individual. And then like the buy-in that you get from people when you're able to find that, and you can make it doesn't always work. Like in the end, there's holes that need to be filled, but like when you can find that right thing for that right person, it's just the stars align, and you can accomplish so much. Yeah, because you get like a level of buy-in that is really like unprecedented.
I think that's so well said, sir.
You know,
like that's so well said, and I think that sometimes, not sometimes, but you see where you're like, how are we not doing that? Yeah. You know, it's like so clear. You got 10 guys here. They want to go there. They want to go there. They want to go there. We have the billets for these positions. We got to fill them. It's posting season, but he's going there and he's going there. And like, he got lucky, I guess. He's going there where he wants to. And I don't want to say any opinion on it, but sometimes I think we can probably get a lot better at it. Yeah. You know, and I don't know how to address it or communicate it, but yeah, it's a very good point that you brought up. And I see it at the NCM level, at the NCO level, and it's hard because it's like, you know, I'm not privy to these higher level conversations of management of careers, but I do think we could definitely do a lot better with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it takes everyone. It's not just one person that can do that. It takes like, yeah, you know, it's got to be throughout. We just have to like shift our mindset a little bit about maybe it's not always like a boilerplate, a standard approach.
I'll tell you this podcast, I'm so thankful for people recognizing and giving me this opportunity. It's an opportunity for me, right? And it just happens to be my jam. and like my buy-in. Like, yo, I got great guys on my team, but like when it comes to this, Monday to Saturday, Sunday, like there's no days anymore. Like it's just like when the things need to be done, there's no question about it. I'm so bought into this.
Exactly.
That one, I'm grateful, right? But at the other same time, it's like it allows me to really,
because it's not work when you like it, right?
That's right. You know that's right. That's right. It's like this level that it's not work anymore. Yeah. It's like purpose.
Yeah.
Meaning. And yeah, it's interesting. I'm talking about myself too much there, but
no, it's good. I like
you know,
this is what the people want to hear.
Yeah, I don't know about that. But man, this has been great. There's so many things we can talk about, sir, and I've really enjoyed my time having you here. And I know we haven't even gone into the rest of your operational experiences. Do you want to talk more about it?
I think probably like I could talk to you forever. You know
yeah.
What I mean? But I feel like we're probably reaching the limit of people's patience. And
you know what? This would be a great opportunity to invite you to come back if you have time in the future.
We'll have to cover. So now we're up to 2019. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in the last 5 years. But yeah, maybe another time, I guess. I'm
gonna hand it over to you for any kind of closing remarks, please.
Yeah, I guess the big thing I want to convey is just, you know, like what a great time I've had in the RCR, in the CAF, and you know, I didn't have any kind of great family legacy in the CAF. I'm just kind of a normal guy from the Eastern Townships in Quebec. And that I've been lucky to be on some good teams and do some interesting work. And like really any Canadian can do this. And so if there's anyone out there watching this that is thinking about joining the CAF or doing this work, like I really encourage you to do it, because honestly, like I can't think of a better life, like a life with more meaning, more purpose. And so I just really encourage anyone out there who's thinking about joining the CAF to do it. That's kind of the main thing I want to get across.
Thank you, sir. And what a privilege to have had you to come on here. I've been so fortunate to have had amazing people in my career who have inspired me, who have enabled me, empowered me to want to be a better soldier, a better human being. And I'm just thankful that we have people like you in the military, sir. Like, the country is so fortunate to have you. The regiment is so fortunate to have you. The troops in the battalion are so fortunate to have you. And I'm privileged to have served during your time of command here. So thank you so much, sir. This has been an incredible experience for me. I've very much enjoyed these conversations that we've had today and learning about your service and your experiences, your lessons learned, your thoughts. And yeah, sir, I just want to shake your hand to say thank you so much.
Thank you. I feel the same way about having you on my team. So really appreciate it.
Sir, too kind. For everybody listening, our guest today was Lieutenant Colonel Ben Rogerson from 3 RCR. He is now going to become the outgoing commander, soon to be changing over and handing off.
Imminent. Yeah.
Imminent. Yes, sir.